I mean, that's a really good point. I think that really one of the things that people don't understand is how monetary policy actually affects the taxes. Because if you look at our real tax rate, including our monetary policy, which means our devaluation of the currency, it's a lot higher than what's currently posted. I mean, it's really kind of actually astronomical. Personally, I think that particular way of going about it is in some ways fine. In some ways, when if someone's illegal, maybe they shouldn't be getting certain social services. But I think that it's not how I would do immigration. And how I would do immigration, just to be perfectly clear, is this. There is a loophole, if you will, that is currently exploited by only the ultra-wealthy. And it's something called investment fees. And basically says that if you give $1 million, if you invest $1 million in the American economy, you get basically put into a fast lane. You have a shorter waiting time. Now, to me, that idea is fine, because of course they have stuff to do with the same background checks and criminal checks and all that kind of stuff. There's still a two-step process of first residency and then citizenship. But I really think that number is a little bit ridiculous. Like $1 million to me is a bizarre number. To me, if I was going to really start to address immigration in a practical way, I would try to lower that number from $1 million to say something at all affordable, say $20,000. I mean, right now, people who are trying to come to this country are already paying that kind of money, and they're mostly paying that money to scam artists who are just ripping them off. I mean, people are willing to do it, and I think that if you have a system like that, we're going to get more people are here to work, and less people are here for social service. I mean, I don't think that immigration is intrinsically a bad thing. I mean, immigration gave us Albert Einstein, but that was a time when people came to America for opportunities and not for social services. So really, I think that our immigration policy should be designed to attract people who are here for the opportunities, who are here to work, who are here to add to the economy, not to detract from it. In terms of the specific nuances, I think the idea that the police can just kind of stop anybody who they think looks like an illegal immigrant, I think that was ridiculous. You know, it was later taken off. You know, I think the idea of trying to turn Arizona into a complete police state where anybody can be searched for anything based on essentially nothing is not something I really agree with. In terms of should people who are here legally be given the same services, and should they be given amnesty and things like that? You know, absolutely not. You know, when you have a line and somebody cuts from the line, what do you say? You know, back of the line. Now, I think we should create a system where people can maybe invest a certain amount to have a shorter line, but the idea of just giving the other extreme, which is just giving amnesty, is something I equally disagree with. I hope that why not end social services? And we're talking about social services. Why not end welfare? Why not why not end welfare? I don't think there's a why not end welfare. I mean, I think that the goal of any welfare system should be to try to get people off of welfare. I mean, that's the purpose of welfare. Now, I think there's a time. Sure. I mean, I think that whether it's done privately, which would be obviously my preference, or whether it's done publicly, which would not be my preference at all, the goal of welfare, when we're talking about immediate term goals, when we're talking about short-term goals, is to do whatever we can to reduce the amount of time people spend on welfare. In this General Assembly, there's actually certain things that were changed. We had in Maryland a cap that said if you had more children while on welfare, you don't get more money. This General Assembly removed that cap, said you do get more money for more children. That to me is a problem. And those are some of the short-term things. Now, when we're talking about sort of long-term, sort of, you know, what the best possible is, I think we agree on what the best possible is to not have any welfare system at all, where we have everything being run by private charities. If that's going to happen, though, the first step is not getting rid of welfare. The first step is for people like us who see this as a possibility to work on setting up those private charities right now. And there are organizations that are doing just that. Citizen Effect is an example of one of those organizations that's entirely government-free, that uses normal money from people like me and you, that lets you see exactly where your money's going. It's completely transparent. I mean, that's what we need to do. Because if you just say to the general populace that, you know, if we get rid of welfare right now, and then we might or we might not have private charity, we're going to have a rebellion on our hands. But if we first set up those charities and show how they work better, and just as private schools are able to attract students even though public schools are free, if we can make those charities work better, we can have a real viable alternative. But it's going to have to be a real one. I don't think a theoretical one's going to sell anybody right now. How do I feel about self-defense?
I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm not known for that.
Okay, so you're saying, you know, like, how do I feel about, you know, using...
How do you feel about using
use
any
it.
type of weapon that you're choosing. I don't
For
care if
example,
it's
use of deadly for
a crossbow,
crossbow.
a samurai sword, a flamethrower.
He might have some of those.
I mean, the way I understand the law in Maryland right now is that if you're in your home and somebody comes in and you shoot them, their family can't sue you, but you can still go to criminal court. You know, I think that we should upgrade that law to being a law that if someone's in your home is attacking you, you know, that all bets are off at that point. You know, they have at this point kind of crossed the line. They have broken the social contract. They have broken whatever code you want to say. And at that point, I think that the use of whatever level of force you can muster is pretty much what you want. I mean, if somebody's there, that's not the time to.
You limit a person's individuality and the confines of their home. Is that my understanding?
So I guess this question becomes like, how do I feel about sort of open carry laws and things like that?
The way you present it was that castle doctrine that is standing known is that's how you circumscribe it, and the limits of my individuality are confined to my property.
Okay, so now the question, I'm just going to.
So I'm no longer an individual, I'm now a slave. Once I leave the confines of my property.
Yeah, I mean there are things to be considered over there, and there's things about like group risk, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, for example, we don't allow people to drive at 500 miles per hour, even though I would love to be able to. It's because at that point, and I used to be an actuary, so I think about risk a lot. At that point, you are increasing the risk of the people around you. Now, I think setting the speed limits as they are right now is kind of a ploy to raise revenue through speeding tickets, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I have specific problems with it, but if someone said that we're going to set the speed limit, in a school zone at 300 miles per hour, I might have a problem with it. I mean, in that way, I think that I'm not 100% pure anarchist or anything like that. When it comes to gun policy, I do think that there needs to be, I think that our Maryland gun laws are much stricter than they need to be. I think that the facts speak for themselves, which is this. Right now, the majority of gun deaths are suicide. Right now, people currently, in our current system, who are non-police and non-military, are defending themselves with firearms about 2.5 million times a year. A lot of times that's not reported because they don't shoot anybody, but just, waving a gun around sometimes enough to scare somebody off. So when it comes to carrying a weapon openly, as long as you don't shoot somebody with it, I think that's fine. I think that a person should be allowed to carry a gun. I think a person should be allowed to carry a loaded gun, personally. I think a person should be allowed to carry, whatever loaded gun they want to. With that in mind, I think how we present that and the way that we go about that, convincing people of that, is important. I think that what we should be going for is convincing people that this is the right thing to do, and then getting them to agree, not sort of railroading through and saying, this is right, I know better. Because in that sense, it's even though you're not doing it with force, it's kind of like the same thing. So in the long run, yeah, I think we should be able to have whatever weapons you want, but not be allowed to shoot people with it. People always bring up the classic example of Columbine. And I always ask somebody, would Columbine have been somehow better if it had been a fertilizer bomb? I mean, is it somehow worse when it's a gun? Is a tragedy any different, depending on the weapon that's used?